Iran's supreme leader cannot speak, not publicly, not on camera, not in audio, not even in person to his generals, ministers, or officials responsible for running the country. Since the night of February 28, 2026, when U.S. and Israeli jets destroyed his father's compound in Tehran, the new supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran has communicated with the outside world solely through handwritten notes. These notes are delivered in sealed envelopes by motorcycle couriers along back roads, through a city repeatedly bombed, through a country at war, reaching officials who are themselves constantly moving and hiding because they know what happened to the previous supreme leader once Israel located him. This is the way Iran is being governed now. Behind the banners, the state television broadcasts, the official announcements, and the defiant statements, the man whose face covers billboards across Tehran is somewhere in hiding. He is surrounded by doctors, unable to speak properly due to his injuries, receiving briefings through a human chain of couriers. On May 2, 2026, the situation worsened. A massive explosion hit a team of Irgc forces, wounding 2 and killing several of the Corps' most experienced, well-trained, specialized soldiers. These were not ordinary troops. They were the elite, sent on missions that cannot fail. They died clearing unexploded ordnance dropped by American and Israeli jets during the 40-day war that had already killed the supreme leader's father, injured the new supreme leader, and destroyed significant parts of Iran's military infrastructure. The war is technically in ceasefire, yet the bombs continue to send a message to the hidden leader. The threat has not passed, and he can be found just as his father was. To understand Iran's current state, one must go back. What happened to the man who was supposed to lead? Why is the explosion in Zanjan more significant than just 14 dead soldiers? For months before the strike, the CIA meticulously tracked Ali Kham, who, after the 12-day war of June 2025, had become almost entirely reclusive. He had retreated so deep underground that his Tehran compound's bunker elevator took more than 5 minutes to reach the bottom. That was how deep and fearful the supreme leader lived. Patience paid off. The CIA, working with Mossad, discovered a scheduled meeting of senior Iranian officials that Kham would attend. The strikes were timed precisely for this meeting. In the early hours of February 28th, Israeli Air Force jets carried out what may be the most consequential targeted killing in modern history. The compound was hit, destroying the meeting. Ali Kham, who had ruled Iran since 1989 and survived decades of pressure, assassination attempts, proxy wars, sanctions, uprisings, and American and Israeli hostility, was killed. His daughter Basra, granddaughter Zara, son-in-law Mesbah Berikani, and daughter-in-law Zara Haddad Adel were also killed. His military advisor, Ali Shamani, was reportedly buried without his head due to the explosion's force. Mojava Kham, his father's son, and the man declared supreme leader within 10 days, survived but barely. He was in the courtyard during the strike, sustaining a leg injury as surrounding buildings collapsed. The Iranian state news agency Fars used a term reserved for severe, permanent physical injury, signaling that Mojava Kham may have lost his leg, suffered burns, and has limited ability to speak. Nearly 3 months after taking power, no video or audio of him has been released. Only written statements read aloud by state television while a photograph appears on screen. No one has heard the voice of the man meant to be the authority of 70 million people since the night his father was killed. 3 months, no video, no audio, only photographs and words on paper that may or may not be his. According to an Iranian official speaking to the Telegraph, no one knows if Mojava is alive or how badly injured he is. He has no control over the war because he is absent. Most commanders have no news of him. This is not a functioning command structure. The top is severed and decisions are made by whoever is close enough to the empty chair to act. The New York Times, based on interviews with senior Iranian officials, Revolutionary Guard members, and those close to the leadership, describes what it calls the rise of Iran's Generals Republic, the IRGC. Founded in 1979 to protect the revolution, the IRGC has grown into a sprawling military, economic, and political empire within Iran. They are no longer behind the scenes. They are the scene. Access to Mojava Kham is extremely limited. He is almost entirely surrounded by medical staff. Senior officials and military commanders avoid visiting him directly because Israeli intelligence could track them and locate him. Decisions normally requiring the supreme leader's input are now sent through sealed envelopes along back roads. Sam Vakil, director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House, describes the situation. Mojava is not yet in full command. Major decisions are largely presented to him as facts already decided, and he merely ratifies them. That is not a supreme leader, that is a figurehead. What most coverage misses is that the IRGC did not just fill the power vacuum after Mojava's injury, they created the conditions for it before the strikes occurred. The evidence of the IRGC's control begins with the moment they selected Mojava Kham as supreme leader under the doctrine of Velayat, the Islamic principle of guardianship of the jurist that forms the foundation of the Islamic Republic's political structure. The supreme leader is supposed to be a scholar of the highest order, a religious authority whose legitimacy comes from deep Islamic jurisprudence, someone who has published works of scholarly Islamic law and whose independent juristic reasoning has been confirmed by the most senior clerics. Mojave Kam does not meet these requirements. He is a mid-level cleric. He has published no scholarly work in Islamic jurisprudence, not a single one. No senior religious authority has verified that he possesses the qualifications the doctrine demands. His father, according to Foreign Affairs, at one point opposed elevating him. So how did he become supreme leader within 10 days of his father's assassination? The Irgc forced the vote. They pressured the Assembly of Experts, the body that selects the supreme leader, moving at a pace that left no room for reflection, deliberation, or the religious processes the doctrine requires. The Irgc had unrivaled access to the Assembly members in the chaotic days following the assassination. Many of these members depend on the Revolutionary Guards for personal security. It is clear what happens when the Guards demand a swift decision. A senior official named Hijazi warned the Assembly before the vote that appointing Mojave would violate his father's principles, effectively handing the country to the Revolutionary Guards and permanently sidelining civilian institutions. He was ignored. The vote proceeded. Mojave Kam was declared supreme leader on March 8, 2026. Analysts note that Hijazi's warning accurately describes what has unfolded. Iran's president, Masoud Peshkin, has reached a political deadlock. Elected as a reformist, a moderate, a doctor, and a politician representing a different face of the Islamic Republic, he has reportedly participated in Mojave's medical care, attending to the wounded supreme leader. Politically, however, he is immobilized. The IRGC has blocked his appointments, sidelined civilian institutions, and concentrated decision-making within the military. Iran International reported that the IRGC now controls key state functions. Analysts say the guards are no longer behind the scenes. They are openly the dominant force in Tehran. This is not influence, it is the power that matters. Meanwhile, the IRGC continues to bury its dead from Zanjan. On May 2nd, 14 IRGC members were killed in a single blast in Zanjan province, northwest Iran, while clearing unexploded ordnance dropped by American and Israeli aircraft during the 40-day war. That war is technically under ceasefire. The IRGC's Ansar al-Mahi Corps confirmed the deaths, describing the victims as among the CPS's most experienced, well-trained, specialized forces. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were specialists. The significance goes beyond the tragedy of 14 deaths. The explosion highlights the ongoing dangers left by the 2026 war. Many bombs dropped by American and Israeli aircraft did not detonate on impact. They remain buried in fields, roads, and neighborhoods and former military positions across northwestern and western provinces. Every clearance operation is a gamble. On May 2nd, that gamble cost 14 of the IRGC's best. The loss of 14 specialists in a single day of peacetime clearance sends a warning to the entire Corps, not just about unexploded ordnance, but about the costs of a war that leadership chose and failed to win. The generals now running Iran from behind a wounded supreme leader's sealed envelopes are the same who watched their air defense systems dismantled, their nuclear program set back years, missile stockpiles destroyed, and their chain of command decapitated in a 40-day conflict they were not prepared to survive. They survived, but barely. Now they run a country where the supreme leader is hidden, communicating via motorcycle couriers, suffering injuries that may be permanent, and appointed to a role he does not qualify for under his own government's religious framework. The process was rushed. In the days after his father's assassination, the most dramatic targeted killing since the beginning of the century. On March 12, 2026, Iranian state television announced Mojave's first public message. It was not delivered by him in person. His voice was not heard. A state TV anchor read the statement while a photograph of Mojave was displayed. The message called for continued military resistance and stated that the Strait of Hormuz should remain a pressure tool. Analysts immediately noticed problems. The text contained numerous spelling, grammatical, and typographical errors, as well as structural issues and disordered sentence sequencing. For a cleric trained in Islamic scholarship and religious communication, where precision and orderly argument are essential, this was highly irregular. Investigators report that analysts believe the statement was written by three people: Mohammad Mirbakiri, a cleric close to the leader's office, Ahmad Vahidi, the newly appointed IRGC commander, and Ali Abdullahi, the commander of Iran's War Operations Room. Others suggest that Ali Larijani, secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, set the content and delegated drafting to others. Mojave Kam's first public message appears to have been written by the G he is governing, if it can even be called that, through handwritten notes from a location he cannot reveal. Surrounded by doctors unable to speak on camera, he relies entirely on the good faith of generals who forced his appointment and now use it as a license to rule. The The explosion in Zanjan connects to all of this. Iran is in a state of simultaneous military, political, and constitutional crisis. The war has formally paused. The ceasefire holds for now. Yet the damage, physical, institutional, psychological, continues to ripple through every layer of the system. The Irgc has emerged from the war more powerful domestically than ever before. It has exploited the crisis to sideline civilian institutions, block presidential appointments, and install a figurehead supreme leader who depends on it for everything, from medical care to communication with the outside world. In effect, if one were designing a system to make a military takeover permanent, it would look like what has unfolded in Iran over the past 3 months. At the same time, the Irgc continues to lose personnel to unexploded bombs across the provinces. It is managing the aftermath of a war it did not win in a country with damaged infrastructure, an economy under heavy sanctions, and a population that witnessed the region's most powerful non-nuclear military force dismantled in 40 days. Iranian civilians celebrated in the streets when Ali Kham's death was confirmed. Mojave Kham arrived as the man meant to reunite a fractured country. The 14 Irgc soldiers killed in Zanjan were described by their commanders as among the Corps' best. They died because bombs from a war that went awry still lie in the ground awaiting clearance. They died in a country still literally living with the consequences of a conflict that changed everything. Somewhere in Iran, in a room no senior official has seen, a wounded man reads about their deaths on paper delivered by a motorcycle courier. He calculates, as any leader would, whether the generals who delivered the note are protectors or men who might one day use the blank page beneath his name for another purpose. The story of how Mojave Kham reached this position begins before his father's death, in the shadows of his father's office, where he spent years building influence few outside Iran's intelligence community fully understood. He was born in 1969. A teenager during the Iran-Iraq War, he volunteered in the Khabib Battalion. Analysts say this forged his deep personal bond with the Irgc, an experiential relationship alongside the institutional one. As his father's power grew through the 1990s and 2000s, Mojave quietly became one of the most influential figures in Iran's security architecture. Not publicly, not through formal positions, but through access to his father, to Irgc commanders, to internal decision-making that never appears in official records. He participated in suppressing the 2009 protests following the disputed re-election of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Thousands of protesters were arrested, beaten, killed. This is documented in American intelligence reports on Mojave years before he became supreme leader. At one point, Ali Kham himself opposed elevating Mojave as successor. The father, the architect of the Islamic Republic's power structure over 35 years, had reservations about placing his son in the role, perhaps understanding the doctrine of Faqih, perhaps aware of Mojave's limitations as a religious scholar, or perhaps because he did not want the Republic to resemble a hereditary monarchy in religious clothing. Ali Kham's preferences became irrelevant the moment an Israeli bomb killed him. During the 40-day war, Israeli airstrikes on fuel depots near Tehran created rivers of fire flowing through surrounding streets. Black smoke engulfed the city. People are now learning, in the most painful way, the delayed effects of those weapons. In Iran's northwest and elsewhere, unexploded bombs remain, with kill radii, secondary effects, or delayed triggers that continue to be discovered by the teams tasked with making them safe. This reality reaches directly to Mojave Kham's hiding place. One central question is whether he can command the loyalty of a military witnessing daily the consequences of a war fought in his family's name. The Irgc generals running Iran are the same who watched the country's military infrastructure dismantled. They needed a figurehead they could control. Mojave, wounded and isolated, serves that purpose. But serving is not leading. Iran's crisis is not merely political or a succession issue. It is a legitimacy crisis. The Iranian people celebrated Ali Kham's death not to see the Irgc seize control, but in hope of reform, moderation, and leadership that could ease sanctions and offer ordinary citizens a life less like permanent siege. Instead, Mojave hides while the generals operate openly. President Peshkin, elected reformist, and please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.